I don't remember the moment I collapsed. 1 second I was rinsing teacups in the kitchen, sunlight slanting through the lace curtains, and the next my knees gave way as if someone had kicked them out from under me. When I woke, the world was reduced to a sterile ceiling, a plastic mask pressed against my face, and the relentless beeping of machines measuring every flicker of life left in me. It was like floating underwater, unable to tell if I was rising or sinking. My eyelids felt like lead, but sound cut through the fog. The shuffle of rubber soles, the faint scent of disinfectant mixed with something sweeter, like artificial flowers. And then a voice. Her voice. My daughter, Melissa, my only child. She's had her life, Melissa said, her tone clipped, almost casual, as if she were discussing a faulty appliance. You can just pull the plug. The words landed like shards of glass. I wanted to sit up, to shout, to ask what she meant, but my body betrayed me. My tongue lay heavy, my hands like sandbags. Only my mind moved, darting back and forth between disbelief and terror. The nurse murmured something I couldn't make out. Melissa hissed back, "No one would blame you. She's suffered enough." Suffered enough? My heart pounded against its cage of ribs. I wasn't gone. I wasn't even that old, 64. I had plans. A trip to the coast. A new quilt for the grandkids. A garden bed already dug but not planted. Yet my daughter, the one whose first steps I'd celebrated, whose tears I'd dried after every heartbreak, was asking a stranger to end me. Inside, I screamed. On the outside, nothing moved but a tear sliding from the corner of my eye, warm against my temple. I hoped she would see it, that she'd realize I was still here. But her voice stayed cool, professional, as if rehearsed. Please, she wouldn't want to live like this, wouldn't I? How would she know? The room seemed to shrink around me, the walls pressing closer, the machines a jury waiting to deliver a verdict. My mind retreated to safer times, scrambling for proof that this moment wasn't real. I remembered the night I stayed up sewing her prom dress, pricking my fingers until they bled. Melissa had stood before the mirror, twirling, the soft pink fabric catching the light. "You're the best, Mom," she'd said then, planting a kiss on my cheek. I remembered pawning my mother's locket to help with her college deposit. The long weekends babysitting her boys so she could rest. Every sacrifice like a bead on a rosary, each one a prayer for her happiness. And now this. The nurse's voice drifted back. "Ma'am, she's stable. We can't make that decision." Melissa sighed, a sharp exhale. "Just keep me posted. I can't sit here all night." Footsteps retreated. A door clicked. Silence. I stared at the ceiling, my tears drying into salt. Humiliation mixed with fury until I could hardly breathe. She had said it believing I couldn't hear, believing I was already gone. But I heard every syllable. I thought of my own mother lying in a hospital bed decades ago. I had sat at her side, holding her hand, whispering that she was safe, that I would be there no matter what. I never once wished her gone. I had been poor, exhausted, young, but love kept me tethered. Did Melissa feel none of that for me? Another memory surfaced. Melissa at 10 years old, running home from school with a bloody knee. "Don't leave me, Mommy," she'd sobbed when I went out for my evening shift. I had promised I wouldn't. And yet she had left me now, in the worst way. My body trembled, but the monitor registered only a flutter. I tried to move a finger, a toe. Nothing. Trapped. That was the worst of it. The helplessness. I had always been strong, the one who fixed things, who knew where the birth certificates were, who could stretch a meal out of scraps. Now I was an object in a bed, my fate debated over like hospital inventory. The nurse returned, adjusting my IV. "You're doing okay," she whispered. Did she know I could hear? Her touch was gentle, but it also reminded me of my vulnerability, my veins exposed, my life literally in someone else's hands. As night deepened, the ward quieted. I stared into the dark corners, replaying Melissa's words. "Pull the plug. Pull the plug." The phrase became a drumbeat in my head. My anger began to shift. Underneath it was something harder, sharper, resolve. I thought of the quilt squares folded at home waiting for me. The garden bed, the coast, the grandkids' birthdays. I wasn't done. I refused to be. In the stillness, I made a promise to myself, carved out of pure will. If I survived this, if I clawed my way back from the edge, Melissa would never hold power over me again. She could take my savings, my time, my gratitude, but she would not take my life. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to plan. How would I show them I was still here? How would I rise from this bed stronger than before? Outside my door, I heard her laugh faintly down the corridor. Melissa, chatting on her phone, carefree as if nothing had happened. The sound cut through me like a blade. But it also steeled me, because in that moment, lying mute beneath the hum of machines, I stopped being her victim. I started becoming something else, someone who would remember, act, and reclaim. I drew in as deep a breath as my lungs allowed. The monitor beeped a little faster. A nurse glanced at me, surprised. My eyelids flickered. She gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. Maybe she understood. Maybe she didn't. Either way, the promise burned in me like a pilot light. I would survive, and when I did, things would never go back to the way they were. I let the darkness close around me, not as surrender, but as camouflage. Let them think I was gone. Let them whisper their plans. I was listening. I was remembering. And as I slipped deeper into the quiet, a single thought rose above the noise like a flare. If I survive, they will never break me again. Recovery was not a straight line. It was more like stumbling along a road littered with sharp stones. Some days I could lift a fork by myself. Other days my hands shook so badly the broth spilled down my chin. The hospital discharged me sooner than I was ready, sending me home with a walker, a stack of prescriptions, and the fragile hope that I could rebuild my life. Melissa insisted I move into her house at first. "Just until you're steady," she said with a smile that never touched her eyes. I wanted to believe her, to believe that maybe the awful words I'd overheard in the hospital had been stress talking. Maybe she hadn't meant it. But every time she touched my arm or adjusted my pillow, the memory of her whisper to the nurse sliced through me again. She's had her life. Just pull the plug. At night, when the house was quiet, I would replay my own history like a film reel. The ledger of sacrifices. Not because I wanted thanks, but because I couldn't understand how a daughter I had poured my entire soul into could look at me as a burden. I remembered the day her father walked out. Melissa was 5. She clutched her stuffed rabbit and asked, "Is Daddy coming back?" I told her no, but that I would never leave. And I didn't. I scrubbed floors by day, worked at the diner by night, barely sleeping, just so she could have new shoes for school and not feel the absence too keenly. When she wanted to go to the private high school all her friends were talking about, I didn't hesitate. I took on a second job, ironing clothes for neighbors, and sold my grandmother's wedding band. That ring had been the only heirloom I had, a link to the woman who raised me. But Melissa's smile when she opened her acceptance letter felt worth it at the time. College was another mountain. I drained my small savings, took out loans in my name, even pawned the antique armoire that had been in the family for generations. "I'll pay you back someday," Melissa promised, hugging me. I believed her. Love makes fools of us. When she married, I gave her the last of my jewelry to help with the down payment on her house. I babysat her children for free, nights, weekends, whenever she needed. She used to say, "You're the reason I can have a career, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words had kept me going, back when my body was still strong. But now she looked at me as if I were a broken appliance left too long on the counter. One evening, while Melissa was out, I shuffled toward her desk, craving something familiar to read. Instead, I found envelopes with my name on them. Bank statements. My hands trembled as I turned the pages. The numbers didn't add up. Large withdrawals I hadn't made. Transfers I couldn't explain. My throat went dry. Had she been dipping into my accounts while I was lying in that hospital bed? When I asked her the next morning, trying to keep my voice steady, she snapped, "You're confused, Mom. The medications are messing with your head." I know what I saw, I whispered. Her eyes narrowed. You should be grateful I even handle this stuff. Do you think you could manage bills right now? You can barely walk to the bathroom. Gratitude. That word cut deep. Was I supposed to be grateful for theft? For lies? I began to keep a small notebook hidden under my pillow, writing down everything I noticed. Amounts missing, dates she dismissed me, comments she made. Each entry felt like stitching a wound closed, a way to hold on to my sanity. Melissa's tone grew sharper with each passing week. When I asked for control of my own debit card, she rolled her eyes. You're being difficult. Don't you see I'm trying to help? You're holding the family back with all this drama. Holding the family back. I nearly laughed when she said it. I had carried this family on my back for decades. I had bled for it, sold for it, bent myself in half for it. And now, in my weakest moment, I was being painted as the obstacle. The gaslighting was almost worse than the theft. She made me question myself, as if my memories of sacrifice were fantasies, as if my suspicion of missing money was paranoia. But the numbers on the page didn't lie. Then came the moment that snapped everything into focus. Melissa left a folder half open on the desk. Inside were forms with my name, her name, and the words property transfer at the top. My house. The little brick bungalow I had worked 40 years to pay off. The deed was nearly ready to be signed. My chest went cold. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were pushing me toward it, clearing the path for when the machines would fall silent. My life wasn't just inconvenient to Melissa. It was an obstacle to her inheritance. I closed the folder quietly, slid it back exactly as I'd found it. My hands shook, but my mind was sharp. Every sacrifice I had made stood lined up before me like witnesses. And each one whispered the same thing. Don't let her erase you. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, staring at the moon through the window, my notebook pressed tight against my chest. I knew then that survival wasn't just about healing my body. It was about protecting what little I had left from the very person I had given everything to. And so, while Melissa slept soundly in the next room, dreaming perhaps of signatures and deeds, I made another vow. The first had been in the hospital. If I survived, they would never break me again. The second was this. I would uncover everything she had taken and make sure she never got her hands on the rest. The machines may have once kept me alive. But now my will for justice would. Strength did not return to me overnight. It came in small victories. The first time I stood without wobbling, the day I buttoned my own blouse, the morning I poured tea without spilling a drop. Each step was a rebellion, proof that I was not the half-dead burden Melissa had painted me to be. But strength of body was only half the battle. The other half lived in the papers I had discovered, the withdrawals, the lies, the transfer documents. My daughter's betrayal still echoed louder than the machines in that hospital room. Every time I remembered her whisper, "Pull the plug," my resolve hardened. She had gambled on my silence. She would lose. I called an old friend, Clara, who had once worked at a law office. My hands shook dialing the number, but when she answered, her warmth steadied me. After I explained everything, she said, "You need a lawyer. A good one. And fast." Within a week, I sat in a modest office across from a gray-haired attorney named Mr. Lawson. His eyebrows rose higher with every page I slid across his desk. The withdrawals, the missing sums, the property transfer. "Mrs. Carter," he said firmly, "what your daughter has done isn't just unethical, it's criminal. We'll freeze your accounts immediately, and I strongly suggest you amend your will." The words lit a fire in me. For decades, I had let Melissa's needs guide every choice I made. Now, for the first time, I was making choices for myself. I signed the papers with a steady hand, cutting her out of the inheritance she had schemed for. When Melissa discovered the changes, the mask she wore cracked. She stormed into my living room, her voice rising. "How could you do this to me, Mom? After everything I've done for you?" I stared at her, remembering the night she told the nurse to end me, the way she dismissed my suspicions as confusion. I had been silent then, powerless. "Not anymore. You did this to yourself," I said evenly. "You stole from me. You lied to me, And you tried to erase me. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were crocodile tears, practiced and hollow. You're my mother. Families forgive. Don't throw me away. I laughed then. A sharp, bitter laugh I hadn't known lived inside me. Throw you away? Melissa, you were ready to bury me alive. I'm simply refusing to hand you the shovel. She tried every tactic, guilt, threats, even begging. She brought the grandchildren in, hoping their presence would soften me. But the children's confused eyes only deepened my resolve. They deserved to see truth, not manipulation. I called my sisters, cousins, even Melissa's ex-husband, and told them everything. The withdrawals, the attempted transfer, the night in the hospital. At first there was disbelief, but as the documents spoke for themselves, shock turned into outrage. For the first time, Melissa was the one exposed, her greed laid bare under the harsh light of truth. The confrontation ended not with screams, but with silence, hers. She slammed the door behind her, and in that echo I felt the weight lift from my chest. The weeks that followed were filled with paperwork, meetings, and long nights where doubt tried to creep back in. But every time fear whispered, I remembered that hospital bed, the sting of her betrayal. And I remembered my promise. Never again. I regained not only my health but my dignity. I reclaimed my house, secured my accounts, and carved a boundary no one would cross again. And more than that, I found peace. Because in the end, vindication isn't just about punishing those who wronged you. It's about reclaiming your voice after someone tried to silence it. It's about standing on your own 2 feet and declaring without shame or hesitation, I decide when my story ends. I think often about the irony. The daughter who wanted me erased gave me the fiercest reason to fight. Her betrayal became my awakening. The machines that once hummed beside my bed have long been switched off, but I still hear their rhythm sometimes. Only now, it's not a reminder of fragility. It's a reminder of survival. And as I sit in my quiet home, tea steaming in my favorite cup, I whisper the words that carried me through the darkest nights. They will never break me again. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers, but from the very people you gave everything to. And yet, when someone tries to write your ending for you, that is when you must take the pen back. I was meant to be discarded, erased, forgotten. Instead, I chose to survive, to fight, and to reclaim not just what was mine, but who I was. What would you do if you overheard your own child saying that? If stories like this move you, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts below. Your voice matters here.